White Mesa is the only other facility that I know of in the world outside of that facility that can do effectively the same thing. I am extremely excited about this, and I think this is one of the best opportunities I've seen in my entire career.
So we have 5 companies who are going to be tolling through your mill, which is great news.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting news because none of them have called us to ask us about that.
Hello and welcome to Crux Investor. First of all, thanks so much for watching this video. If you like it, give us a thumbs up. Helps us to understand which companies you think we should spend our time, money and effort on for you. And of course, do leave your comments below. That helps us understand the sort of questions you think we should be asking, how you think we've done, of course, what you thought of the company. And you can also catch this as a transcription, article or podcast on cruxinvestor.com. And for our Crux Club members, you get early access to this video. And if you haven't already done so, please click the button in the corner of the screen to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And of course, for more videos like this, click the notification bell. We spoke earlier today to Mark Chalmers, CEO of Energy Fuels. They're on the NYSE and also on the TSXV. They're a uranium producer in the US. We discussed the US House Appropriations Committee's decision to block the uranium reserve funding and what the implications are for the market and for Mark's company. We also discussed them paying down 50% of the convertible debenture, the rest of it being due at the end of this year, and how he's going to be able to deal with that. We look at rare earths. Looking forward, Mark seems quite excited about some of the things that they're putting in place. We've spoken recently about Constantine Karayannopoulos' involvement with NEO and obviously formerly Molly Corp as well. We look at M&A activity, the possibility of it, new entrants from ASX companies buying up US assets, what Mark's views are of that, plus a variety of other topics. So do take a look in the description below at some of those things discussed. Anything interests you in particular, click the number beside the topic. That's called a timestamp, and I'll jump you to that part of the video. Otherwise, enjoy everything that Mark has to say. Mark Chalmers, how are you doing, sir?
Very good, Matt. How are you?
I'm excellent. I'm excellent. So I haven't sort of spoken to you since we were at that AusIMM online virtual conference together. How did that go?
It went really well, Matt. And I think I've mentioned to you that that's an event that I've chaired for 15 consecutive years, and I was very pleased that we got it up again this year, the 15th year in a virtual format, and we had very good attendance and some really excellent speakers.
Yeah, and I know that's kind of tough going from a sort of actual in-person type conference to doing something virtual. But you had some amazing people on there. We've been watching back some of these sessions, and good session. So thank you for putting that on, first of all.
My pleasure. And we tried to broaden it out a bit more this year with things like the small modular reactors, and I think that was popular. Those broadening that out a bit.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's quite good. We try to do it as well, which is trying to help educate people about uranium, because what we're seeing now is a lot more, new investors coming into the world of investing, but also generalist investors who perhaps haven't considered uranium before. All of them are asking questions, which I think it's easy for people like yourself, or certainly even us, to forget that people coming in that's new. So all of this is good information. But look, we're not here to talk about AusIMM. We are here to talk about Energy Fuels. I want to start specifically with the recent announcement by the US House of Appropriations to say no to the funding of the uranium reserve. How do you feel about that?
Well, look, and it was something we didn't want to have them say no to, but it's not like no. They zeroed it, and they basically said they didn't have enough information from the Department of Energy on how the program would be implemented. I think and I believe the DOE is trying to answer those questions as we speak. The DOE is also looking for other sources of funding the reserve. Secretary Briette have been out publicly saying that he has very strong support for the uranium reserve. The Senate is behind it, or at least the Republicans in the Senate is behind it. So it's it is a setback, but it really reflects on the differences between the Republican Party in the United States and the Democrats. So, but we are making progress. with the government, bipartisan-wise, because of the dependency on Russia for uranium products and China. So there is progress being made. It just isn't every day do you make a step forward, but we are making steps forward, more steps forward than backwards.
Okay, so are you saying that the House turned that down purely on political reasons, or did someone not do their homework and provide the information that had been requested?
Yeah, it's a combination of those things. We're certainly doing everything we can, to get it back into the House bill and unzero it. But these appropriations are like trading exercises between both parties and different people's interests. But we have very strong support in the Senate and the DOE and this increasing threat of Russia and China, particularly Russia for nuclear fuel products. So I think a number of Democrats are recognizing that, but some of the Democrats are opposing it for other reasons, and that's politics.
That's politics. So talk to me about, okay, so that's not in your control. It was never in your control. It was something that you highlighted, but you've got to focus on things that are in your control. So what are you doing that you can manage?
Well, look at a lot of the work we've done, through the 232 process of the Nuclear Fuel Working Group and the strong policy statement that the Nuclear Fuel Working Group report that came out of the working group are still helping us on a lot of fronts, not just in appropriations, but also in some of the negotiations on the Russian suspension agreement. Basically the working group said that it is a national security issue, receiving so much of our uranium from imports and particularly from Russia. And so that's helping us in other areas. And we're still pushing on all fronts, appropriations and our participation in the negotiation on the Russian suspension agreement. But we are managing the company on the company basis alone, not dependent on government support. I mean, we've seen, some increases in uranium prices over the last couple of months. It's kind of flattened out lately. So you've got to multitask in this business. If you don't multitask, you will not survive. But we're in very good position amongst our peers, and we're very excited about the future.
Okay, so just sticking with the government component, if we may. So you have, over the past couple of years, been talking to people in DC, up on the hill, as you say, the phrase goes. Have you made relationships? Have you made useful relationships? And at what point do you start cashing in on those? Because at the moment, they're not giving you what you want.
Yeah, look at the cashing in is the difficult part. We certainly have the strong relationships in the push in the administration. But as I said, there's some indirects here that we are cashing in on, and the Nuclear Fuel Working Group is one of them. I think that take the Russian suspension agreement, that expires at the end of this year, and there's active negotiations on that front. But for example, I think one of the key issues with the Russian suspension agreement is that the Nuclear Fuel Working Group says that we're overly dependent on Russia and state-owned enterprises. So that's a very strong policy document, basically prepared by about half of the president's cabinet. And, I think that's something very powerful to use in those negotiations. So, so again, not always completely clear to particularly, some of our investors, but, we are punching above our weight in DC on a lot of these fronts. It is frustrating because it's taken a lot of time and we haven't seen the money in hand yet, but it is getting through people's minds that we are overly dependent on critical minerals, particularly uranium, vanadium, and rare earths in the United States right now.
Okay, so That's really interesting to me. Okay, so the strategic minerals, the critical minerals component is really interesting to me. So these relationships that are being formed or have been formed, they're recognizing this. But my view on this is politicians, they always want something from you. They don't necessarily going to give you anything back. So you're giving them a topic that they can promote themselves and their own agendas on. But do you seriously think that Energy Fuels is going to be able to capitalize on this? For instance, I know you've been talking about rare earths recently. Are you hearing things which make you think we need to lean a little bit towards rare earths? Because those are the sorts of noises coming from the Hill.
Well, you've heard me say it many times that we're first and foremost a uranium production company, but we do think that the rare earth sector fits very nicely in what we do, our core business, because we can recover the uranium from a lot of these rare earths. A lot of our political supporters on the uranium reserve and the nuclear fuel cycle are also the exact same supporters for reducing our dependency on China for rare earths. So it all fits nicely together. And there is no company out there in the United States, none, not one, that is got the optionality when you deal with these critical materials as Energy Fuels with the mill and the vanadium and the potential for us to be, we believe, commercially producing rare earth concentrate in the quite near term. So look at it. It's like I said, it's a lot of these indirects, but I think that a lot of the people that have been again supporting the Nuclear Fuel Working Group and the production of nuclear products in the United States, when they see that White Mesa could have multiple uses in the critical minerals area, they're delighted. They're actually delighted to know that.
Okay, so people new to this, you're talking about the White Mesa mill, which you control, and it's the only mill in the district which actually can cope with uranium, vanadium, and rare earths. But we'll come back to that because I do want to come back to that. And before we skip away from the RSA, the Russian Suspension Agreement, the date is 31st of December, end of this year. A decision needs to be announced, or any time between now and then. Have you heard anything about what is being discussed? Are they going to come up with a decision anytime soon, or are they going to leave it to the last minute? And if so, what type of deal do you think we are going to see as a result?
That's the big question. Look, there is, and I can't go into details because a number of people that are participating can only go into so much detail. But I can say this, that there is a push by the government to reduce quantities of uranium coming into the United States, where there is a push by the Russians and the utilities to increase the quantities of uranium coming into the United States. So those are completely oppositely opposed, okay? And I think that is a rub. And as I said earlier, the Nuclear Fuel Working Group report says that, we shouldn't be increasing our dependency on Russia. There was an preliminary administrative review that was completed a month or so ago by the Department of Commerce. And, they basically said that the conclusion of this agreement was largely being kind of gained by some of these people that want more uranium coming into the United States. And I think that shook up the utilities, and it should shake up the utilities and the Russians. So look, it's it's moving forward. I think is a high priority for the government. I think it's a high priority for all the stakeholders in those renegotiations or negotiations. But I will say, watch this space, because it is probably, well, without a doubt, getting the most attention, in my opinion, right now in the uranium space globally again. And I think that preliminary administrative review that said that even though the agreement that's in place right now was people were abiding by it, the fact that it was expiring and that a number of the utilities and the Russians were over contracting greater than the 20% is creating some ripples in the water right now.
Right. So you say watch this space. Do you mean watch this space in terms of timing? You think it's an imminent, or watch this space because you think the terms will change? I mean, what do you mean?
Well, look, the deadline is the end of this year, 31st of December 2020, but the administrative review process is ongoing, and it was supposed to, I believe, terminate in early August, and now that's been extended by another couple months. So it's just very much in the works right now, and the outcomes are not certain. But it is getting a lot of attention. And as I said, there's really two camps: to reduce the quantities coming in the United States or increasing the quantities. And the Nuclear Fuel Working Group's basically is saying it shouldn't be increased; it should be extended or decreased. So, this is, as I said, these are the kind of things that indirectly are pieces to the puzzle that we were very much drivers of as Energy Fuels. And it is helping us right now on other fronts that are less transparent because of the nature of the negotiations.
But I think it's now also apparent that the battle you were fighting, because you've got an argument of national security, critical minerals to the U.S. being self-sufficient, and which is one position, and the other position. One of the parties in all of this was not aligned, and that's the utilities, who are taking a commercial decision, and you would argue short-sightedly, because they wanted the cheapest possible product. They want more of this, more and cheaper for longer. So that was the battle you were fighting, and these guys had big, deep pockets in terms of their lobbyists. I mean, that seems to me a big part of what was going on in all of this.
Well, look, and again, we have very good relationships with many of the utilities, and I've delivered uranium to many of them for decades. But yeah, no, they're and I give, the utilities are, looking at cost, and they're trying to manage their businesses as they have to. But look, I think that for small company like Energy Fuels and the uranium industry, because it's not just Energy Fuels fighting this battle, but mainly Energy Fuels has taken the biggest position, I guess, in pushing it forward. I think we have, as I've always used that phrase, we punched above our weight. I mean, these utilities are very significant organizations, and with multiples and multiples of billions of revenue per year. So look at it. That's why I said we're gonna keep pushing on all those fronts. We're not going to give up. We are not going to give up. But at the same time, we're going to manage our business based on the market fundamentals.
Okay. Big discussion, lots of unknowns. Timing is, well, we know there's a stop date at the end of this year for the RSA, and that seems a big moment for utilities, as does the US election, and that's another big moment. And I know there's a consensus that nuclear is part of the solution at both sides of the House, but the Democrats a little bit less so than the Republicans, I think I'm hearing from you. So I think even the utilities will be wanting to understand what the outcome of that election is. But that then has an impact on timing, because the dust doesn't usually settle from a US election until, February, March. And then maybe there's a shakeup, even if the incumbents stay in. So again, what does that do for timing around utilities, decision-making, term contracts, etc.? How do you feel about that?
Look at it. There's a lot of uncertainty, and uncertainty is uncertainty, and so look at, as I said, we're preparing ourselves for any eventuality. We did pay down half of our convertible debt. We're looking at the other half on how to best address that. We're increasing our inventories, but we do think that as I said, there's uncertainty, but I think that if there is administration change, they're talking more negatively about hydrocarbons than they are nuclear, and actually, to a certain extent, supportive of nuclear as being important to get to zero carbon emissions. So, look, and I don't want to over speculate here, Matt, but I think you've seen over time that we are a company that positions ourselves aggressively but not recklessly when it comes to the overall picture of the company, and we will be the survivor or one of the survivors in this space, and because of the way we manage the company now and going forward.
I get that. So one last kind of macro point here. Okay, so you producers, you're a producer, right? The largest in the US. The Cameco's of this world, and I guess even the Kazatomproms of this world, you have relationships with utilities all around the world, and I know you can't badmouth them. You've got professional relationships with these guys, but it's been a sort of deeply frustrating process for all producers for the last couple of years, has it not? To have this fight, this debate around pricing. You need a certain price to be able to get back into production, and you need to be incentivized to do so. So getting back to the question, which is, what do you think the timing is for utilities recognizing that if they don't push the button soon, you guys aren't going to be able to get it back into production and give them the pounds that they need when they want it?
Yeah, look, those are the trade-offs, and I think that some of the utilities understand that and appreciate that. Some of the utilities don't. They think that total dependence on the Russians, is fine. I mean, even companies like Cameco, some think, well, we'll be totally dependent on our allies, and we have no uranium production in Canada right now. The production is dwindling in Australia with the shutdown of Ranger at will be at the beginning of 2021. So the Western world, I mean, that's the clash. It's really the state-owned enterprises in the Western world. That's the clash. You need higher prices, substantially higher prices for the entire world, including the Western world, to continue to survive in the uranium industry. Some of the state-owned enterprises maybe a little less so, even though a lot of them are not as low cost as people want to think. So that's the clash. Do you want a diversified supply chain, or do you just want to get all your product from state-owned enterprises? So, that's the uncertainty there.
Okay. Well, let's talk about something you just mentioned, which is obviously you've partly paid down the convertible, which is due at the end of this year. You paid down some $10.43 million. You've got the same again due at the end of the year. So why did you go early on the payment, and what are you going to do about the end of the year payment?
Well, look, we wanted to show the market that we were, managing that debt, convertible debt, and that was about 10 million Canadian. And we thought it was a prudent step to pay half of it. We're still looking at how to best address the other half. We have the ability to convert that into shares at, I think it's like a 20-day VWAP at about a 5% discount at the end of the year if we elect to do that, or pay it off in cash. But Matt, I think I've told you, having been in this business for over 40 years, I've seen these companies get in trouble because of debt on a number of occasions, and that is an area that is close to my heart, to not get over leveraged on debt. And at the same time, there are a number of the uranium guys that are taking on more convertible debt, and we're going the opposite direction, which is a differentiator. No one else that I know of in our space has actually been paying off debt. They've been taking on more debt than as they go forward. So watch it. We'll pick our moment, and we'll address the debt no later than the end of the year, maybe sooner. But we want to make sure that we do it on our terms.
Is selling down some of your inventory a possibility? Because again, looking at the numbers, if you've got about 21 to 23 million bucks worth of uranium, you've got about 8 to 9 million bucks of vanadium. I know the prices are low, but if needs must, would you consider selling that down?
Look, anything is possible. We like holding the inventory because we think the market is poised to reward us for having that inventory. By the end of this year, we'll have in the order close to 700,000 pounds of inventory close. So, it's our objective not to sell the inventory down until the prices are at higher levels. Look, there's a number of ways to address the debt. But we would really like to see, the continued increases in uranium and vanadium prices, particularly uranium prices, to get a bigger lift out of out of that inventory.
So do you think it'd be cheaper to refinance your debt rather than pay it off or sell off inventory, because the upside on inventory could be more significant to you?
The inventory we carry on uranium is like $23 per pound, and currently the price around 33. That's how we carry it on our books for accounting purposes. And so we've got about a $10 lift, just on the uranium price itself. So that's material to us. We think there's more upside for inventory than downside. You don't get any money in your accounts anymore, interest-bearing accounts. So we're pretty comfortable having this inventory that we can liquidate quite quickly if we need to when the time's right.
Okay, but there's some good news, Mark. I think I've solved your problem, because I've spoken to of cash flow. I've spoken to 5 companies who are going to be tolling through your mill, which is great news.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting news, because none of them have called us to ask us about that. None of them. Okay. It seems like every week I see another, press release or something that shows a picture of our mill, and they didn't even ask permission to use the picture of the mill. Look, I need to clean this up, because it's not right for people to just assume they're going to have access to the mill, because they don't have access to the mill. We have no milling agreements at this point in time. In the event we decide we're going to give, and we probably won't give it out, a milling agreement, we'll announce that. But for all our investors, or any investors in any of those other companies, no one has access to the mill except for Energy Fuels. So it's amazing how they all chime in and show pictures of the mill, and how it's close by, and inferring that they have access to it. Well, they don't.
Okay. No, I just wanted to, because I know I've spoken to you at least a couple of times before. You've been very clear with me, but we keep seeing it, and I just wanted to give you the chance to, and that's the most direct you've been with us. I do appreciate that as well. One more thing, if I may. The other thing that's happening is there's a lot of Australian ASX listed juniors coming and picking up uranium assets in the US, and they're getting funded. They're raising money off the back of this. I mean, why haven't all of these amazing uranium assets in the US been picked up before?
Well, there's a lot of uranium assets in the United States, and a lot of these properties that people are picking up, they're not permitted. Now, there may be one or two that are permitted, but a lot of them are not permitted. And over the last 20 years or so, I mean, like in our case, we've picked up, many of our projects are permitted, have a long-term production history and recent production histories. There's only so much space in the market. Getting permits is very, very difficult. And there are other companies that do have some permitted assets. So look, I don't know, to pick up unpermitted assets, to not having access to the mill, very speculative kind of investments. They have been raising money on it. And frankly, a lot of these projects on the Colorado Plateau are of lesser risk. and probably easier to get to market than a lot of these other uranium deposits that some people are promoting outside of the United States. So there's a long production history in the U.S. So look, there's different investments for different groups and investors. So just all I would say is people need to know what they're investing in, and if they're comfortable with that, that's fine. That's their choice.
It's always their choice. Why didn't you pick them up?
We don't need any more assets. We have we have assets in about 6-7 different states. Most of our assets are permitted. Most of them are recently have been worked, and the underground workings are in good shape. The mill has been operable. Nichols Ranch has been operable. Alta Mesa. So, we don't need to own the Western United States. It's costly, and there's a point where it just makes absolutely no sense to have more assets.
Okay. Question sent in. Wouldn't it make sense for Energy Fuels to now step in as a buyer? They need ore for the White Mesa mill. They want uranium. They want vanadium. The Sunday Mine complex is basically next door. This might be a fun ride going forward. Any plans?
Look, I'm not going to say we're not going to buy uranium in the future, because that's the history of the district. But to put it into perspective, over the last 10 or 15 years, there have been times where we have had milling agreements, and we have perhaps bought some ore from people, but it turned out to be just a very small percentage of the production that came out of White Mesa Mill. And I don't know the exact number, but probably in the order of maybe 10% of the production that came out of White Mesa came from other mines, that were not owned by our company. So now look, that can be variable, but the reason we don't and haven't paid a lot of attention in this market is, one, the prices are too low, and two, historically, other people may have the aspirations of becoming producers, but very few can actually really contribute in a material way in the mill. Now, if the price uranium is $75 a pound or something like that, that could change to some extent. But as I said, we already have a number of mines ready to go that we've operated within the last year. And these mines that were mined 30, 40 years ago and nobody's mined them since, I hate to think of the condition they're in.
Is that a no?
So look, we still control the district with our White Mesa Mill, 100% owned, and that's because we've spent the money to keep it in good working order over all the years. Anyone who wants to build another mill, they can go out and get the permits and construct another mill for several $100 million. That is always open to the realm of possibilities.
So that's a no plans anytime soon to go and have a conversation around M&A with Western Uranium and vanadium?
Well, it's subject to change. For example, if the U.S. government decided, or the price of uranium increases to a level where it's economic to have those discussions, I'm not saying we're not going to have those discussions, because if we can get material into the mill and that helps us, we're not going to, why would we turn our head to that? We will not turn our head to that. But I'm just saying that right now we have no agreements with anyone. Okay. So no one should just assume they have access to the mill right now. They should not assume that. And, but things can change, and we are absolutely in the driver's position with the mill. And the material from our projects will take first priority over anybody else's material.
I hear you. Okay, Mark, good catch up. Thank you very much for that.
We didn't talk much about the rare earths, and this
Oh yeah,
is
sorry, you're right. Let's do it. Let's do it.
exciting spot for us, Matt, and again, a huge differentiator. So we're still advancing our efforts on the rare earths. I hope to have more news flow on that front, in the coming months. It has by no means gone away. People that I say that, oh, we'll never do anything there, whatever. I tell them they're full of baloney. We're going to do things in the rare earth space, and it is certainly getting a lot of attention. Certainly has bipartisan support. The rare earths and the dependency on China. So all I can say is watch the space, but we are advancing things, but we can only kind of unveil things as we kind of close them out. But we're still testing material at White Mesa, and we're getting a lot of interest in it. And so if you talk to people in the rare earth sector, those that know about sort of what we're doing and our aspirations, I think you'll find that many of them will say that we're in a very unique spot here, very unique spot.
And I've got to ask you.
I don't think the market's recognizing that right now.
No, I hear you. And I've got to ask, only because I'm so pleased at the way I can pronounce this, how are discussions with Constantine Karayannopoulos?
Well, look, Constantine is an advisor to us. He just recently went from non-executive chairman to CEO of Neo Performance Materials. So that's a company that he founded and developed back in 25 years ago. But no, look, Constantine and I talk on a routine basis, and Rocco Kelly, and so we've got a very good relationship with those two gentlemen, and both of them work for Mountain Pass and Molycorp. And I think if you saw, Mountain Pass Materials announced that they're going to have a list, $1.5 billion rare earth company, on the Mountain Pass deposit in operations, and that got some attention in the market, and that's why I think that we're not getting any differentiated value with our peers in the uranium space. But then we have this, what I consider a very significant opportunity in the rare earth space, and still be able to recover uranium from those streams. So, basically what we're proposing to do is exactly what CNNC is doing in China right now, treating monazite streams of material, recovering the uranium, and going through the stream of further downstream rare earth processing. And White Mesa is the only other facility that I know of in the world outside of that facility that can do effectively the same thing in given some time. So watch it. And I am extremely excited about this. And I think this is one of the best opportunities I've seen in my entire career in rare earth space, and how it blends in with energy fuels. So
we will watch it. We're excited by it. We've spoken to enough rare earths companies. We know the restrictions that they have around processing outside of China. So I do get that. I'm eager to sort of see what does happen over the next few months, this side of Christmas, hopefully, in terms of how you're moving that one forward and who you're having those conversations with. So, keep us up to date. Pick up the phone like you always do.
We'll keep you up to date, and as I said, some exciting times ahead. It's a tough business, but you got to know how to navigate it. And I don't say that I know exactly how to navigate it at all times, but after over 40 years in this business, you got to be tough, you got to be tenacious, and you got to be aggressive but not reckless.